What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitico Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with all the BS of the damn government, man. It's insane to me that this channel has to even exist. The fact that I have to get on here and complain and point out all the BS that the government does, and honestly, it's mostly the corporate press. The corporate press will take the Democrat narrative and just run with it. They'll take stories and twist them into reality and twist the facts and make you think that Trump's an evil orange man and the Republicans are all evil, and that they actually point out the fact that Christians are evil. Holy crap, we never knew this. We thought these Christians were God-fearing people that just wanted to do the right thing, that wanted to obey the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor type of stuff. You know, the same people that will go and pray for you if you're sick and say, I'm going to go pray for you and make sure that you get well. Those people, come to find out, somehow, I don't know how, they're evil, folks. Yeah, wow, I didn't know that. This is weird. You know, the people that you would think that they're some of the most upstanding people in this country. Yep, nope, they're evil according to the left. Of course, everything that's not left is evil according to the left. And the justice system is swung so far left and has become the antithesis of justice, if you will. It's just become outright crazy. Now, we've had a committee hearing the other day that Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo, two well-known names now, were supposed to be there to testify, but they refused to do so because the trial is technically still ongoing until sentencing on July 11th. So they are going to show up on July 12th to testify before Congress, and that is going to be a glorious Judiciary Committee hearing, and I can't wait to see it. But they went ahead with their committee hearing anyway, just to go ahead and get some facts out there, and man, there was some shocking evidence come out. You know, of course, we saw all the evidence about the Trump trial being BS, and, I learned that this case is probably going to get overturned on appeal. It's almost a guarantee this will get turned over on appeal, just simply due to the errors, the malfeasance of due process. They failed due process. They have this thing called discovery, where the defense has the right to see all the evidence that the prosecutor is bringing toward. Now, we know for a fact, in this case against Donald Trump, the quote-unquote hush money case, that they couldn't name the underlying crime. We didn't know the underlying crime until the damn jury instructions, for God's sakes. And then, get this, on those jury instructions, there was a multiple freaking choice, and the jury did not have to be unanimous on which one they thought Trump committed. Two of those being federal crimes.
Commissioner Traynor, I want to read from your testimony. They have sat idly by and allowed a state officer to assert federal jurisdiction where they themselves had taken jurisdiction and couldn't prosecute. I want you to unpack that sentence for us again real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. The Department of Justice, all of these claims with regard to the $130,000 from Ms. Daniels stem from a complaint that was filed at the Federal Election Commission following the 2016 election.
But you guys were investigating.
We were in the process of investigating that.
And the DOJ came to you and said, stand down, we're taking over, and give us your information.
They asked us to abate that and several other
DOJ
matters.
meeting the Southern District of New York.
That's correct.
They took your information, and you guys, you voted to stand down and give it to the federal authority, right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And they determined that there was nothing there to prosecute other than Michael Cohen.
That's correct. Now, they took a very long time in doing it, and when they sent it back to us, we had no more authority to investigate because they sent it back to us, and we were barred by the statute of limitations from even investigating the normal civil things that we would look at with regard to those type of expenditures.
But your point here is they've sat idly by and allowed a state officer to assert federal jurisdiction where they themselves had intervened, to use a word, and taken jurisdiction from you and concluded there was nothing there regarding a federal statute, right?
That is
a, quote, federal crime that they come up with somewhere.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know what role Mr. Colangelo played in that investigation that took place when they took it away from the Federal Election Commission, did that investigation, and then he later left the office to go prosecute this at the state level.
Well, we're going to find that out on July 12th when Mr. Colangelo will be sitting in your seat, Mr. Bragg will be sitting in Ms. Foley's seat, and we'll get a chance to ask him. The Miss Foley, Mrs. Foley, excuse me, the Democrats talk about, jury of his peers. Okay, fine, that's how our system works. But if President Trump didn't learn what the unspecified crime was until the jury got the instructions from the judge, that sort of changes the dynamic a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not blaming the jury. I mean,
of course,
the jury, has to operate according to the instructions provided by the judge. The poison here, the poison pill, are the jury instructions themselves, which provided the notice, but it came too late for purposes of due process. So yeah, I mean, you can't correct that through a bad set of jury instructions. If there's a due process defect because he learned too late, you have to redo the trial. You have to reverse the conviction, and then the prosecutor has to decide if they want to. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I was an economics major. I mean, a major focused on wrestling, but you had to get a degree. I got one in economics, and they talk about this opportunity cost. If you don't know what the issue is, you miss the opportunity to maybe focus in on the issue as the defense counsel, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of important, particularly when you're talking about what kind of sentence they may try to impose on the president on July 11th. That's kind of important, right?
It's kind of important, and I would suggest that any member of this committee who faced similarly amorphous charges or a loved one would be absolutely incensed by facing these kinds of charges, where it was a moving target.
You're not the only constitutional scholar who's raised this concern, this, I think, huge concern. Mr. Dershowitz, Mr. Turley, I mean, other esteemed constitutional scholars have said the same thing.
I'm in good company. I think there's a general consensus that there are some due process problems here.
You sure are. Mr. Attorney General, July 15, 2021, Alvin Bragg. I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump, and I think it'd be hard to argue with the fact that that'd be the most important, most high-profile case, and I've seen him up front and seen the lawlessness that he could do. That's what he said as a candidate. Does that fit with kind of the ethics of someone who's a member of the bar and running for a district attorney's position? Is that how you're supposed to conduct yourself in a campaign?
Absolutely not. That abhorrent statement is an incurable impropriety that should have disqualified Alvin Bragg from prosecuting that case.
Yeah. Not to mention, then when he gets the job, he looks at the facts, looks at all the evidence, and he concludes, like, this case, I shouldn't prosecute it. I should do what the Federal Elections Commission did, not prosecute. What the Southern District of New York did, not prosecute. What my predecessor, Cy Vance, did, not prosecute. That's what he wanted to do until the political pressure came. They talk about us all the time, pressure. Came from the left. Mark Pomerantz left his job, volunteered, goes and becomes an assistant district attorney to go after President Trump. And then when Alvin Bragg gets there and looks at how crazy the case is, and Michael Cohen's going to be their star witness, he goes, this is crazy. I'm not doing it. I'm not that crazy. But then they leak, Pomerantz resigns, leaks the letter, and all the left goes crazy. And Alvin Bragg says, now I'm going to do what I said during the campaign, even though I know it's wrong. And that's what happened. And then they got a judge who went along with all the crazy things Ms. Foley's pointed out. That's the story, and that story is consistent with the facts. That's why we're here today, and that's why we look forward to Mr. Bragg and Mr. Colangelo sitting right where you're at so they can answer our questions.
So get that, right? These people are so damn deranged with Donald Trump that a prosecutor at a local Manhattan District Attorney's office is pissed off and resigns from his position because the district attorney cannot go after Donald Trump. Do you get how insane that is? The guy gets mad and quits because there's no evidence to go after this man. There's no freaking case there. And so this guy gets pissed off and leaves and then yells out to the entire world, hey, they're not going after Donald Trump. And then all of a sudden the left comes up in an uproar and says, no, screw that. They get pissed off, start pressuring Alvin Bragg, so he brings this case. He gets this judge that was randomly chosen, right? Quote unquote randomly chosen. Yeah, right. And they put together this case. They try to work their political thing and twist this crap around, and lo and behold, they bring this case and it falls flat. But do they care? No, they don't care. That's why the jury instructions had to be specifically the way they were. But there's so much political malfeasance around this thing. You could literally make several Donald Trump clones with all the political malfeasance, if that's even possible. Right? Like, I'm sorry, I just made that up. I thought it would be funny. It kind of fell flat. But whatever. You know, we're supposed to have equal protection under the law. The law is supposed to be blind. That's why there's statues of Lady Justice holding her tipping scales in her hand with a freaking blindfold around her face, because that's supposed to symbolize that justice is supposed to be blind. We're not supposed to care who the hell we're going after, and the Biden administration has proven that to be false in this country. They do not care. The governor of New York, after the fraud trial, came out and had to make a statement to all the business owners of New York State that we're not going to come after you for this, because that fraud trial was a fraud, right? They went after Donald Trump on something that was ubiquitous and is technically not illegal, but because they can twist the law around and do this, they made it illegal and came after Donald Trump for some BS in this fraud trial. And she had to come out and ensure to the people of New York that they're not going to come after anybody else for this. They're only going after Donald Trump, because after that ruling, anybody in New York, anybody in real estate, they could come after, because like I said, it's ubiquitous. They all do that. They all get loans to try to develop new properties, and they use their existing properties as collateral, and they try to get the most possible amount they can for that. They try to say, hey, this is worth more than what it might actually be worth. But due diligence exists, and the banks will go and assess the property and say, no, we don't think it's that. We think it's worth this. And they'll give them a loan based upon that. They won't give them a loan based upon the owner's assessment of how much that property is worth. So that is not illegal to say, I think it's worth this. That's what Donald Trump got in trouble for in that fraud trial.
But Mr. Bailey, let's turn to you and let's talk about the equal protection aspect of it. As you've just described, Ms. Foley, this is one case against one man for one purpose. And in fact, the governor of the state of New York has said it. Look, everybody, don't worry. Don't worry, we're not coming after you for these kinds of fraud claims. We're just going after Donald Trump. Isn't that the antithesis of the foundation of our Constitution that is based upon equal protection and equal application of the law? Have you ever seen anything like what they have done to Donald Trump in their effort to destroy who they perceive to be their political enemy? Mr. Bailey.
I have never seen such an egregious assault upon the tenets of equal protection as when government officials in the state of New York claim that they are specifically targeting one individual and will not use the same laws against anyone else. But I want to go back to the due process issue briefly, because everything that's being said here is further amplified by the fact that Section 175.10 of the Code of State of New York, which forms the basis of the 34 charges, has an affirmative defense that requires the defendant to get a preponderance of the evidence. How can he go get his evidence if you bring the claims late? Statute of limitations are intended to prevent sandbagging of claims.
That's exactly right. And in this particular circumstance, and what we've seen in the other persecutions against Donald Trump, they absolutely had to violate those basic tenets in order to go after him. It is absolutely an egregious violation of the law. It is a level of constitutional malpractice, the likes of which I've never seen. And Ambassador Eisen, I think that if you were being honest, you would agree with that. With that, I yield back.
There was something else in this case that struck me that I almost overlooked, because Thomas Massie was just kind of going on ranting. Thomas Massie, by the way, is one of the best members of Congress. One of my favorite, not my favorite. Chip Roy is my favorite, just simply due to the railing that Chip Roy does against the Republican conference itself and against the corruption in Washington, D.C. This guy is the greatest congressman to ever exist, in my opinion, because of it. He exposes all the BS that's going on, but Thomas Massie, in this hearing, brings up something that's very, very curious, and I didn't know about, and makes you kind of wonder if everything that I've been saying for the past 8 months that I've been on this channel about Congress is actually true.
Somebody pays their attorney to seal divorce records because they may be going to run for office, or they are running for office. Mr. Traynor, is that a campaign finance expense? Is that something you see on campaign finance reports?
That is not. It is something that you would see, legal fees are often reported, and it has been the tradition at the commission in looking at those legal fees that we don't question what the attorney-client privilege between the candidates and the lawyer are of what's needed in those particular circumstances.
So let me use another example. In 1999, Bill and Hillary Clinton bought a house in New York, obviously influenced the election of the Senate race there in New York because they moved into the House so that she could run for Senate. Is that a campaign finance expense? Is everything that could influence a campaign finance expense?
Well, under Mr. Bragg's interpretation, it would be, but under normal campaign finance law, it would not be. There are distinct similarities here between the John Edwards prosecution in 2008, where he paid over $1 million to his mistress to keep her quiet, and was prosecuted by the Department of Justice for that and was ultimately acquitted on one count and had a mistrial on all 5 counts. Because the jury was given a correct charge as to what the federal law was. In this particular case, the jury was given an incorrect jury charge as to what the law is, and they come out with a completely opposite ruling.
I asked my campaign finance treasurer if I could pay my wife $10,000. She's got more dirt on me than anybody else. And then report that as a campaign finance expense. And he's very fastidious. He manages the finances of at least a dozen different campaigns. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Yet, isn't that sort of the same theory that Alvin Bragg had here? That something like that could be reported as a campaign finance expense?
It's very similar to what's happened here.
So, Congress has paid over $17 million in hush money for sexual misconduct inside of the offices in these buildings. And what's more is that was taxpayer money. Right? The allegation is that President Trump paid $130,000 of his own money. But here in Congress, there may be some on this dais. I mean, I'm for turning loose all of these records. Who in here has had the taxpayer pay for their sexual misconduct charges the hush money? I bet there's some over there. There may be some over here. I don't know, but I do know it's taxpayer money, and I do know not a single penny of it has been turned in as a campaign finance expense. Is the FEC going to investigate the $17 million that Congress has paid to settle, behind closed doors these sexual misconduct allegations?
Congressman, if a complaint were to come to us about it, I'm sure it would be thoroughly investigated.
I might file one because it seems like anybody could do this. But let me just ask this. Is this verdict going to be vacated? Attorney General Bailey, what do you think?
It absolutely should be.
On what grounds?
Numerous grounds. I think the 5 grounds I laid out in my opening statement provide sufficient justification to undermine the credibility of the conviction. I think there are additional grounds as well, but I think that the constitutional violations, the due process violation, the jury unanimity, 6th Amendment problem alone, the gag order is violative of the First Amendment. I mean, the prosecutorial misconduct, the conviction is replete with legal error.
Ms. Foley, do you think this is going to be vacated, this verdict?
I do, and I think eventually it's going to be reversed based on legal grounds rather than mixed questions of fact and law. So some of the evidentiary issues, some of the bias issues, I think they're more difficult to win on appeal because the appellate courts owe deference on these evidentiary determinations of trial judges. Bias is very difficult to win on appeal because the judge has so much latitude in deciding whether to recuse himself. That's why the due process errors are so critical here, because obviously due process errors are questions of law. They get de novo standard of appellate review. The appellate courts owe absolutely no deference whatsoever.
So the irony here is this is going to be vacated, and this trial was all about trying to influence an election, using the process as the punishment.
So just let it be known right now that your taxpayer dollars, $17 freaking million of it, has been paid out to shut people up about sexual malfeasance of congressmen, so they would stay quiet, y'all. And that gets to the crux of this case here. Donald Trump paid that out of his own pocket That didn't come from campaign finances, even though that's what Alvin Bragg is trying to say. It was election interference. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't election interference. And, you know, people are still pointing out the fact that nobody, and I'll point it out again too, that nobody is going after Hillary Clinton for paying campaign money. She actually used campaign donations to create up a fake dossier to say that Donald Trump was a Russian plant, that he was working with the Russians. You remember the Russia hoax? Russia. Yeah, that. She used campaign donations to fabricate evidence. To me, that is much worse than what Donald Trump has done here, right? Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, trying to shut down negative stories about yourself, especially when the other side is fabricating falsehoods to try to get you not elected, to try to tank your campaign. What in the F is going on with that? Like, why are these people not going after the Hillary Clinton campaign? Why are they not going after these people for doing this? Where is the district attorney wherever Hillary Clinton's campaign was? Why is that DA not going after Hillary Clinton for this? The statute of limitations may have expired for misdemeanors, but I can imagine, I'm not a law expert, but I imagine that's a felony. You can't do that. That's one of the most egregious things you can do. Like, right? Like, how come our political campaigns have gone from trying to win the argument by trying to say why they are the better politician, why they will do a better job at running the country? Why has it gone from that to a political smear campaign to trying to make your political opponents just look bad based upon past actions, based upon their voting record or anything they may have done in their past? It went from that to now fabricating evidence and not even trying to win the argument, just trying to get more pieces of paper, which is what the Democrats just abandoned trying to win the argument in 2020. Because why? Because Joe Biden can't win the argument because Donald Trump has a good track record of doing a pretty good job. Of course, he has a track record of doing a bad job as well. Talk about $7 trillion added to the national debt. But outside of that, at least the economy was booming. Inflation was low. People were making money hand over fist. The regulatory shackles were being taken down from the industries out there, allowing these companies to flourish, allowing the American people to flourish. His foreign policy was the best I've ever seen in my entire life. We had peace all over the world, for God's sakes. Russia wasn't invading Ukraine. Hamas wasn't attacking Israel. Israel wasn't attacking Hamas. We had peace in the Middle East. He destroyed ISIS, for goodness sakes, right? We were doing well. But the deep state didn't like that. They didn't want somebody that wasn't a part of the political establishment because they can't tell Donald Trump what to do. Intentionally withholding information from Donald Trump, just undermining his presidency step after step at every single angle. Everything he tried to do was a fight for his life to try to get done. The little bit of fencing that he made, right? Like his own party, the Republican Conference, was going against him in the early part of his presidency. For God's sakes, people tend to forget that. Right? Like, oh, Donald Trump didn't pass any legislation, right? Like, well, no, he did. But when you have your own conference going against you, yeah, it's hard to get anything passed. And I can't stand that argument. David Pakman brings that argument up. Well, President Biden has passed more legislation than Donald Trump ever did. You know what? The president isn't a legislator. For God's sakes, they are in charge of the executive branch. They are not there to write and make laws. They are there to enforce the laws that Congress makes. So that is not an argument. But when this thing goes to appeals court, I imagine all these issues from this video are going to be brought up. All these issues that these congressmen are bringing up are going to be brought up. Hopefully, I know for sure that we're going to get Matthew Colangelo and Alvin Bragg to testify, and then hopefully we'll get some more evidence of political malfeasance. Hopefully one of these people slip up, because just the simple fact that the guy third in line for the attorney general, right? Like he was third under Merrick Garland, quit his position to go to Manhattan, to go to a local district attorney's office just to prosecute Donald Trump shows some impropriety there, that there's a major conflict of interest going on with this. And it's like, okay, hang on. He was at the DOJ when the DOJ refused to charge Donald Trump for this. Like, so what's really going on here? Like, were they just waiting to buy their time? Or did they just all of a sudden one day have this light click on in their head like, oh, we can go after him for this. Hang on, Merrick Garland, I'm going to quit. I got to go to Manhattan because we can't charge Donald Trump. But I know a way that Manhattan District Attorney can, and it seems like that's what happened here, because even Alvin Bragg didn't want to bring this case. Or was it timing? We will never know, I don't think. I have no idea, but I think this will get overturned on appeal. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. That's all I got for this one, y'all. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.